What makes you believe as a reporter that you can get to the bottom of any story?
I don't believe that. I don't think I can get to the bottom of any story. But I think if you listen well and you show empathy and you're not just out for the most, sensationalized side of the story, you can get closer to the bottom. Yeah. But what is the truth? It's there's three sides to it. Your side, the other guy's side, and then the truth. But the truth is, it can be hard to know what the truth of something that happens is unless you really just are, omniscient. None of us are. So I don't think you can get to the bottom of a story. You can sure dig out a lot.
Can you explain further? So how do you know you have a story? And how do you know that that's the final story?
I think you know you have a story after a while just by instinct, and there's something here. I'll try to give you an example. And when I was at the LA Daily News, we came across something that became much more common later, which would there be an environmental problem. The lawyers came in, tried to cut a secret deal with people that got sick. When I would go around and try to dig deeper into it and talk to people like a relative of somebody who signed a deal, they got money because they have cancer, but they can literally not tell their sister. And just as a human being, that is so outrageous. And you don't have to be a Boy Scout to know that's just wrong. That's what tells you a story, just your instinct, I think, for humanity. And, when oftentimes somebody cries, there's something really going on. And I saw that. And, it was just like peeling back a horror story. And it still has gone on. It's still gone on. And I'll refrain from saying who else I think is guilty in this. But, when I got up in the morning, I was thinking about it. I was thinking about it when I was driving home. I just knew that there was some stuff being covered up people needed to know about. And I was really, that type A in me had to, bring out more. My big regret is I left the paper probably prematurely to go start writing my books, including about my family. And I know there was much more that never was exposed. Even though that was partly the one that got away, I knew in my blood, this is really an important story, much more important story than about some corruption or somebody getting $50,000. It's people's lives on the lines. Can you imagine you get sick and your best friend lives next door to you and you cannot say anything about it, or you're going to lose $100,000 you need for an operation? That's what they do in America. I'll say though, I grew up in 1970s Pasadena in the tail end of the worst part of the smog era. And it was so bad. I mean, people that had perfectly normal lungs, were doubling over like they had asthma. And, I asked my mom a lot of questions about smog. She used to, her big response would be, it's getting better. Here's a damp washcloth and a bare aspirin, go lie down. And it must have seeped into my subconscious, because when I became a reporter and the environmental beat was up for grabs, I wanted it. I didn't even know why, but I think those memories and that curiosity, even though I didn't want to solve the chemistry of it, I wanted to solve the why. And we lived very close to Mount Wilson, and you would not be able to see Mount Wilson. I mean, it was just this thick chemical fog that was brown and gray. And I remember, I always felt like it smelled like chlorine. I don't really know why. That would just come down and the outdoors would be canceled for the day.
How does being skeptical pay off?
There's a bumper sticker, which aren't very popular anymore, that says, if you're not cynical, you're not paying attention. I think that is true. And being cynical of everybody. It's good to have a healthy skepticism. You know, during the pandemic, one of the interesting things the food makers did is family size food. Gosh, it doesn't feel family size. It's got the same height of family size, but that width is not family size. Somebody got suspicious and made a story about that. You know, I don't think there's that much difference between being observant and skepticism, or cynicism is a little darker, but people should be have more healthy skepticism about everything. You know, whether it's something a politician says, whether it's a statistic you read in some scientific journal, unsubstantiated anecdote your friend tells you. But to me, just I wish there was more curiosity in the world. Not apropos of that, but I remember I was driving on the Foothill Freeway and I saw a woman in an ambulance. And I could see it, this older African-American woman is in an ambulance, and I could see her face through the window. And I thought, what's her story? Is she going to be okay? Where's her family? You know, is this the end of her, or is she going to find a better chance? I almost wanted to. I just started getting really interested, and it probably would have been a little stalkerish, but I wanted to follow and see if she's going to be okay and what the rest of her story is. So. That's not skepticism, but I sure wish folks were more curious, and when they saw something on the internet, they got skeptical if that was true or not, and actually looked for verification of that. I mean, if your whole life is just going to one little website and seeing the world through that, that's going to be a periscope, you know. So I think, in a way, being skeptical or curious keeps you honest.
Do you put a time limit on the research that you do?
I'm a classic over-researcher because I'm so curious, and I will, for every 10 pages, let's say I print out, I'll use one. You know, that's the problem with rabbit holes, is that you don't know how deep they are. I don't put a limit on it. I try to put more a limit on my writing. You know, when I'm going to say I'm going to be done with this draft by this date. And I'm always, you know, as a journalist, I always met my deadlines. As an author, it's hard, especially if you're trying to keep a lot of irons in the fire. And I've tried to do that this last year. One thing I've noticed when I've gone back to my novel after I've tried to work on turning some of previous things I've done into trying to do a screenplay or a pilot, something like that. It's not that you're not just jumping back into fiction perfectly. And I can see when I try to BS my way back into being in a groove. You know, I wasn't really, you know, I wasn't focused enough. My mind was still half on something else. So, you know, the big problem for me is just keep focus from one genre to the next. Get back into that right genre, that right mode of writing, into your characters' heads, you know. And so, if you know, I'm working on nonfiction book pitch right now, and doing that and then writing dialogue for a character and a story you invented are night and day. So that is my challenge, is being focused, not being distracted by the other things you're trying to propel.
Well, that was my next question, is how do you balance having so many interests? Because it seems like there's so many things interest you.
I don't balance it very well many times, to be honest with you. You know, because I'm a perfectionist. I'm a worrier. I want to know how this is going. I don't want anything to get orphaned. But I just realized actually I've just put off everything else I'm doing to finish my novel, because I owe it to that story, and I can't be distracted. I'm actually writing it. Part of it is an honor. This is a true story of a dying friend who wanted me to help him write an apology letter, and I'm not going to let him down. That's one thing I feel like when I'm writing something, I always have to be pissed off about something or doing it in somebody's honor. It's kind of that martyr syndrome. You know, it goes back to the belief of yourself as a hero. But I do have, you know, if you're so spread out, you're not being loyal to an individual idea. And so I've said I'm not doing anything until I'm done with this, you know, book called Later Days, and then I will go back to my other children. Yeah.
Well, maybe that is another part of why being type A is helpful, because you honor that and you want to finish it. You know, so many people start things in the film industry and they don't finish them.
Absolutely. When you're younger, you can, as a reporter, you have to be a good reporter. You have to be a good multitasker. Boom, boom, boom. You're working on 3 different stories at the same time, you know, and you just, when somebody calls you on one line, it's on something different. You just have to, you know, firewall and go to the next thing and be able to, your mind is more supple when you're younger. Now it takes me an extra cup of coffee or, you know, walk outside or whatever. So, yeah.